go ahead and kick off the first meeting of 2016. A lot of familiar faces out in the group, so that's good. We'll do our introductions, but I will let everyone know that we have a new member of the panel, Kristen Zakos, who's a counselor through the city of Charlottesville and is the not replacement, but the city's elected successor to the panel for former Mayor Huja. So let's go ahead and start with our announcements. If anyone needs to take a rest, it's down the hall and to the right. There's a men's room and a ladies' room. If we need to vacate this room for any reason whatsoever, we would go back down the steps, out the door we came in on, hang a left, and then a left into the parking lot behind this building. Pete, why don't you go ahead and start the introductions? Happy New Year.
Pete Borchers, CMA Properties. Happy New Year.
Mark Graham, Albemarle County.
Kristen Zakos, City of Charlottesville.
Brad Sheffield, Albemarle County Board of Supervisors.
Chris Engel, City of Charlottesville.
And as I mentioned, neither Henry nor Karen could be here today. I know Chip Boyles is at a meeting in Richmond and may make it depending on the time that he gets out of his meeting. Morgan, I believe, is expected, so we'll see. Allison?
Allison, Town CTV member.
Joel D'Annunzio, Charlottesville residency, VDOT.
And speaking, perfect, Chip. I mean, just tell us who you are. Tell us who you are.
Chip Boyles with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District.
Glad you made it, Chip. Oh, this is. I feel like we're on a show, like a TV show. Here's Morgan. Morgan Butler from SCLC is here for everyone watching.
Dave Covington, VDOT Charlottesville residency.
Gabby Messina, Philip Shuket Company.
And they call it VDOT.
Kyle Jones, VDOT, Charlottesville residency.
John Lynch, VDOT Culpeper District.
Lou Hatter, VDOT Communications.
All righty. And for the folks watching, as usual, if you go to the panel and meetings tab and then to the advisory panel documents, you'll see the agenda and the presentation notes for today. We'll take a look at the people that tuned in last time. Kristen will remember that back for panel one, these numbers were up near 100 or more at times. So we've lost a little interest since then. But for the December 3rd meeting, if you'll recall, the last meeting in November was down a little bit, but the December numbers look pretty consistent with the people that have been tuning in at every bi-weekly meeting. 23 viewers, 42 streams, and people hanging on for 21 minutes a stream. So very consistent with what we've seen. A little more feedback as far as the email inbox. Of course, we didn't have the December 17th meeting. There was one note regarding the condition of some pavement on Route 29 north of Albemarle Square, and Dave, I believe that's since been addressed with some new pavement. One person wrote in regarding employment opportunities with the contractor, got them directed over to Lane Corman. A person wrote in regarding a damage claim to windshield, I believe, and Lou pointed them in the proper place to the claims folks. One person was looking for the rendering of the RIO GSI, and they were pointed to that on the website. A thank you note from the Best Buy folks for Lou taking care of that parking issue where he had some contractor vehicles parking in the Best Buy parking lot. Got that squared off. And two people wrote regarding the Route 29 South pavement condition between Hollymead and Polo Grounds. And Dave, we've got that squared off as well. There was one new comment on the website that we responded to, And it's really one that we've talked about a few times with that merge on Route 250 westbound at the ramp, at the new ramp construction at Best Buy, down at Best Buy. And, you know, VDOT has looked at that on more than one occasion and just concluded that the existing situation is the best way to manage that while we're under construction. We're getting closer to that being done, which is good news. The hotline did get some phone calls, and we'll keep this number out here for folks that want to use the hotline. Kristen, this project hotline rings into Lane Corman's office, and there's a fellow there that monitors it daily. 3 requested some information about the Ashwood Boulevard signal work that's still ongoing, should be wrapped up this month. One was regarding a sign, actually a lighted sign at the entrance to Forest Lakes. And there was some concern of whether or not the contractor had done some work to sever the electricity to the sign. Turns out the contractor did go out and look at it. It was no work that the contractor had done, but there was a breaker that needed to be reset inside that sign structure, which they reset and let the Forest Lakes Neighborhood Association know that all was well. 2 hang-up calls that didn't leave a message. So that is it for the input. Kristen, this wasn't around for the first panel, but on the Route29solutions.org, there's a little tab that says provide input, and it was at the suggestion of this panel, actually Pete, that in addition to people just writing an email inbox, it was a place for sort of a visible running dialogue for anybody that chose to engage in that. There was a lot of that earlier on, basically focused around RIO, but I think there's about 300 and some comments have been left there. Okay. Linda? Report on feedback from the December 3rd meeting. Each one of these items is going to be covered under a separate agenda item later on, but we had some outstanding issues on the lighting, landscaping, and hardscaping, the pedestrian refuge area, and the buffer between the Route 29 widening project and the shared use path, and the guardrail and landscaping down at the Best Buy project. But we'll hit each of those at later on in the agenda. There was one other thing that Joel and Cabina were good enough to look into for us, and it was related to those accidents on Route 29. If you'll recall, last time we had a summary that there had been 4 accidents in October. The date is only current through October. We were able to go back and look at 2014, and there were 6 accidents in October between 29th and Woodbrook. So if you'll just recall, 2015, there were 4. There was a rear end. There was 1 vehicle that made a U-turn out of the wrong lane. There was a side swipe, and then an angle collision for a car that ran a red light. Back a year ago in October, there were 6. There were a couple of rear enders. Actually, there were 4 rear enders, all in the daytime, 2 at Rio Road, 2 a little further south at Fashion Square, and there were another rear end up at Gardens Boulevard, and someone hit a deer at 5 a.m. in the morning. So there doesn't seem to be, at least looking at that 1 month, now we'll keep looking at those monthly differences to see if there are any noticeable changes in the number of accidents through the construction period. But Joel, thanks for running all that down. And I know it wasn't. I noticed that you sent me that late last night, so I appreciate it, Kavita, very much. Thank you. This is a point in the agenda, just if anybody has any open issues on their mind or particularly wants to make a suggestion for the agenda for the next meeting. Pete, you want to?
Not at this point, thanks.
Okay.
I may have something that we cover under the later items on the agenda. If not, I'll circle back to it.
Okay. Okay.
No, although, can I ask a question about the previous one?
Yes.
I noticed there was an accident last night and wondered if there was any relationship to the construction at all.
Is that the fire?
No, it was a moped got
Yeah,
hit.
it was a vehicle.
Yeah.
The moped got hit by a car south from Berkmar.
Yeah, across from,
Yeah, it was not, had nothing to do with the construction.
okay, great, thanks. I mean, it's still sad. I just wondered
It is.
if there was any.
They had to shut down the road, do a reconstruction, and do an investigation.
That's Hal. Is that the one you were?
Yes, sir.
I saw a note from you a little after midnight on
That's
that.
right.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Just south of Branch Lands.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Nothing else.
Right. On item 5, if at December 3rd, we've been tracking, just like we did a bit during the first panel, but we've been tracking our progress through the design phase. And a couple of meetings ago, the panel correctly said, we're sort of finished all that. We need to start tracking construction, which is a little bit more difficult to do. This schedule is a roll-up from about 40 pages of tiny rows and very detailed items. Last meeting, if you'll recall, we just sort of, the projects were across the top and we had the months down vertically. And Mark, you indicated that it might be better to see it a bit in more of a Gantt chart, which I agree with. The challenge is to roll it up enough that it's digestible, but not too much that it's meaningless. So a fellow on Dave's team has been working with the schedule, finished this up yesterday. The 5 projects are down the vertical axis with, December's hanging there, and then the rest of the year across the top. And just for example, if we look at, let's look at 29 widening. The temporary signals were scheduled to be finished before the end of the year, and not that they're a critical path item, but they weren't. So that's indicated there that's late. It's still underway and scheduled to be completed before the end of January. The other activities that would be taking place, if you look down January, there's the continuing utility relocation at Rio GSI, which should finish up before the end of the month. The driving of the abutment piles, beginning to set the retaining wall piles, and roadway widening, which is going to be the key work that will be underway leading up to the May period when the excavation work and setting the bridge deck will happen at Rio GSI. A lot of utility work still underway at 29 widening, right-of-way acquisition, some abutment excavation and grading on Berkmar. Hillsdale, this part up to March is still design work with the bid advertisement set for March 31st. And then the work that's finishing up on Route 250, the Best Buy ramp, which is scheduled to be complete on or before May 21st. So I don't know if this is a little, the way I would envision us using this and tracking it would be that things that are underway would be noted. As something is complete, we'll change the color to a green so we know that that's done. And if something is behind, like the temporary signals, we'll note it. We spent a good bit of time, Andrew and I did yesterday, Dave, looking at the roll-ups. It would be very easy I think the the RIO schedule alone probably sucks up 15 of those 30 pages on the project control schedule. So to roll it up into 3 pieces to get us through to May, there's a little bit of art related to that. There's a whole lot of other activities that I'm always careful to, when you say we really don't care when they happen, well, we really do care that they happen. You know, there are a lot of items that are termed not critical or not on the critical path. The way I look at that is they're never critical until they are, and then you're in deep trouble. So we've rolled it up to the most important items that we want to track to keep on schedule. The contractor, you all may remember Jason Tracy, the project manager that moved here from North Carolina, is going through a bit of re-baselining of the schedule, and when we will have that this month, we'll fill out the rest of the activities for 2016. Mark, I mean, I'll ask you first. Is this a bit more of?
Yeah, this is probably of all the detail I was looking for. The one question I did have, taking any of those other activities and started falling behind schedule, would it then be changed to red? Taking the Route 29 widening, for example, the Phase 1 grading and drainage, if it was February but you saw you're falling behind, it doesn't look like you're going to finish by the end of April. Would it then change to red?
Absolutely, because what we don't want to do is say, oh, April, we did. It's the end of April, we didn't finish.
Right.
Now, all of that is tracked just that way on the CPM because you're watching as the actual activity is being completed.
Yeah.
So we'll keep an eye for that.
But for me, this is the appropriate level of detail.
Okay. I mean, and I know it's small. You know, if you go on the website, it shows up pretty good on the page. It's in your presentation. There's obviously some trade-off between making it easy to read and making it useful. You know, I do like this because I can look down and just look at the month of January and get a pretty good idea of what's going on. Kristen?
How did you decide where to stop? Because I noticed one of them says construction complete, but all the rest don't. And where are the lines for the things that will continue to happen?
Yeah, we'll need to finish building this out when we
Okay.
get the rebaseline schedule. This is the only one that finishes in 2016. Well, that's not true.
Something is happening in October, November, December.
That's exactly right. This one finishes up in December. The RIO GSI contract completion date is December 2nd?
Yes.
It's December 2nd.
I think it would be helpful on the left column there, under the names of the projects, to put the estimated completion date, just for those that continue on past 2016.
It's on the website, but that would be
Kind of the layman who's looking at this that doesn't have the benefit.
There'll be a December 2nd, May 23rd, May 21st, and 3 October 31st. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Philip is stating the obvious, but while it doesn't affect the completion date necessarily when they're moving pieces inside the construction schedule, those specific pieces do affect the residents, businesses, and people commuting. So as much as this is an overview, we need to continue to communicate the details of when major things are going to happen inside the project.
Yeah, and we'll keep doing that in a rolling 2-week, absolutely. I mean, Pete makes a great point. There are a lot of things happening inside one of these bars. I mean, that do affect access to businesses, in particular lane closures or whatever activities might be. Chris, Brad?
No.
This works for me. Okay. And you know what we may be able to do? I won't get too fancy, but I've done it before where you kind of have a running smaller bar in the middle. I don't know how easy that is to do on Excel actually, but we'll keep track of that because some of these activities are pretty long, and you can get lost real easy in the middle. Not happy about the red one, but we'll get that fixed, right?
Yeah, and I know that Hillsdale isn't part of the 3 projects, but there should be some red there.
Well, had we done a 2015 before December, no, Pete is exactly right.
March 31st probably shouldn't be in that cell either.
You know,
We're really being honest.
we wanted to, the plan was to have Hillsdale advertised before the end of the year. Actually, I told you about the weekly meetings that we added on top of the meetings for the design build projects. Hal and I talked on Monday, and Hal is actually going to beginning tomorrow, going to be having a daily call with the Hillsdale team, which I strongly encouraged, and just to keep everything focused on hitting this March date. And if we hit the March date, then we should be good for finishing up October 31st of 2017. Okay, we'll continue to work with this schedule format. Dave, the project updates, and maybe before you launch into them, you can just quickly recap 2015 for everybody, just a bit on, remind us what all you were doing in 2015?
Sure. I've got actually about a page and a half of things here for 2015. I'll just kind of go over the overreaching ones. Started the year with reviews of technical proposals and eventual selection of a design builder. Issued a notice to proceed on March 4th. Received the first plan submittal on March 6th of this year. RIO GSI roadway plans were approved on August 21st. The GSI bridge plans were approved September 18th. The 29 widening plans were approved on October 19th. The Berkmar extended roadway plans were approved on December 16th. The Berkmar extended bridge plans were approved on November 13th. The 29-250 interchange project is on track for completion by May 21st of this year. And the Hillsdale Drive extended project will be advertised by March of this year. So this kind of just shows at a very high level a lot of the stuff that we accomplished this year. I've got more specific detail for each project, but we probably don't want to go into that level of detail here, I don't think.
Oh, that's fine. Just if anybody has any question about, I mean, it's history now.
Yeah, I mean,
it was a busy year. A lot went on.
It was a very busy year. I mean, like I said, page and a half of quite honestly high-level information. If anybody has any questions about, you know, how we progressed, where we're at, or where we're headed in 2016 with any of these projects, please let me know.
Dave, let me ask you this as the program manager, just for you. What were the challenges in 2015 that helped you and your team look ahead into 2016?
Well, obviously the big challenge in 2015 on the design build projects was design. You know, our target was, let's get through design. This process usually on a large project can take a year and a half, 2 years before you even turn dirt. We were able to do this in a matter of months on some of the projects. You know, you heard the RIO GSI was approved August 21st. So that's very fast. That allowed us to get a little bit of a jump start on construction, so that as we move into 2016, it lowers our risk that we're going to hit that May 23rd date. We're very, very confident we're going to hit that May 23rd date now by getting that early start. So this was a lot of front-end work by the design builder, a lot of coordination between VDOT and the design builder, and also getting the utilities relocated, which is always a major issue with major construction projects. So I think, to me, that was probably the largest thing. 29-250, setting the schedule on that, getting it advertised early last year, moving it forward to construction and monitoring it, to make sure that that's completed by May 21st is also critical. So.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to the project updates. 29250 interchange work this week, shown here on the screen, continuing the installation of the storm drain structures. They've moved to the median of 250. You've seen some work in that median. There's an extension of the left turn lane and some drainage structures that need to be installed. That's ongoing. Also, as we've discussed previously, continuing the storm drain installation on the Barracks Road on and off ramps. A lot of activity on those ramps now. Completing the sidewalks and the ramps, the pedestrian, the ADA compliant curb cut ramps along Route 29, and completing the installation of the median strip along 29. We have guardrail, we have sidewalk, we have curb, but there's some backfilling and planting grass and things like that that still need to occur. Next slide, please. So significant lane closures this week. We actually had some outside and inside lane closures that are occurring on 250 during the daytime. This was for survey stakeout. They had to go back and actually stake some of that out, do a little bit of work in the median. So on the 5th, they closed the outside lanes. 6th, yesterday and today, closed the inside lanes to do that work. During the night this week, there's a short duration closure on Route 29, northbound and southbound, alternating right at the bridge, and this was to install conduit underneath the bridge. We don't want to do that work over live traffic. And ramp shoulder closures for storm drain installations. That's the Barracks Road ramp. Slide. Over the next 2 weeks, we see more of the same type of work. We're into these longer duration, repetitive cycles. Installation of storm drain structures in the median of 250. Installation of the storm drain structures on the Barracks Road exit and entrance ramps. Completing the installation of the MSE wall panels is a big item. We've been talking about that for quite some time. It's a large retaining wall. Well, late this week, early next week, that'll be completed. All those MSE panels will be installed, and they'll move on to the next phase, and we'll start in the future. We'll see the sound walls go up on top of that, and the roadway widening to the outside on 250. And continuing the construction of the Route 250 turn lane extension. That's in the median, headed westbound on the 250 bypass, the left turn to 29 southbound. Does anybody have any questions about the 29-250 interchange project? Okay.
That May 21st date is a big deal.
Yes.
How's that look?
I asked for an update on that yesterday, and all indications are that we are going to meet or exceed that date.
The panel, Kristen, just a little bit of background. This panel said that, look, if you're going to start this intense period at Rio on May the 23rd, the Best Buy ramp needs to be done and out of the way. And at that time, I think the completion date was actually sometime in July, in the middle of the summer. And the comment was made early enough that we were able to change that contract completion date to May 21st of 2016.
Okay, lane closures anticipated over the next couple of weeks. I'm sorry, I forgot these. Similar things, inside lane closures to construct the turn lane extension on Route 250 bypass, and ramp shoulder closures for storm drain installations. Next slide. Rio grade separated intersection work this week.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
What's the alternating short duration closure on 29 northbound, southbound?
That's to install the conduit on the bridge.
Are they moving southbound traffic to the northbound side? Or?
No. They'll just stop it for a very short duration, and they'll pull the conduit across and then open traffic back.
Okay.
So they don't want to do anything over top of live traffic, because if they for some reason dropped a piece of conduit, it would hit a vehicle.
Yeah.
So we're talking late at night, very short duration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Earlier, Philip talked about there's a lot of different items in those boxes on that schedule, and one of the boxes for Rio included roadway widening. Well, this is kind of an example, this first bullet here, of work that's going on this week. Grading for under drain, curb and gutter, sidewalk, in the widening areas. So in all four quadrants, we're widening out a little bit to get traffic around temporarily and permanently. And that work is going on. There's storm drain, all kinds of things in those little widening areas that add up to what's in that box of roadway widening. Storm drain construction, like I just mentioned, in 3 of the 4 quadrants, actively going on this week. The SunTrust retaining wall was completed this week. All the concrete's been poured. There's a couple of little touch-up, finish-up items that need to be taken care of, but for all intents and purposes, that major construction activity is complete. They're moving the crews from the SunTrust retaining wall down to the Fashion Square retaining wall to accelerate the construction on that, so that's ongoing this week. Gas main relocation, Philip also mentioned the utilities that are wrapping up this month on the Route GSI project, and that's a major one. They're scheduled to finish on the 16th. They've got 2 little short runs of gas main to relocate left, and they'll be done. Completing the CenturyLink splicing, that's in what we call the north switch up near the Taco Bell, all outside of the roadway. They go over there, work on it, and splice the lines, and really doesn't affect anything else. It's not holding up any other construction activities. That'll be done this month as well. Completing the pile driving at abutment B, which is nearly complete. They just have a few piles left to install, and they'll move on entirely to the installation of the tieback piles, which is the last item here, installing those tieback piles. So if you recall, the abutment is what has to be driven. Every other pile on the retaining wall outside of that is augured and placed in the hole. So that we have the abutment piles, which are driven, we have the tieback piles, and then we have what we call cantilever piles at the end. So the cantilever piles are done, abutment piles are pretty much done. Now the cantilever pile, or the tieback piles in the middle, which is what they're working on. But they don't need to drive those piles at all. They just place them in the hole for the concrete.
So the pile driving, bang, bang, bang in the middle of the night is how close to?
Right at the finish line.
Right at the finish line.
When they're done with that, they're going to move the crane over to Berkmar, and when they'll use that to drive the piles for the south abutment on the Berkmar Bridge.
So the nighttime pile driving in the Rio area should be finished
Next week.
next week?
Yeah.
So you'll have a whole new set of calls coming in.
Yeah, that's daytime. Daytime on Berkmar. So, I mean, we're working to notify some of the, there's not any residents in the immediate area, but for instance, Doubletree Hotel, we'll let them know if they hear that noise, that's what it is.
Brad and I were talking earlier, and I think that, frankly, people have been amazingly tolerating the nighttime pile driving, and when it first started, there's a lot of uncertainty about what the heck is that.
Yeah.
And as people have heard, oh, this is what it's for, this is when it's expected to occur, and this is when it's expected to end, citizens have really been extremely accommodating and understanding.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then just, Pete, to follow up on your comment, we're expecting only about a week's worth of driving over on Berkmar during the day, so there's not nearly as many piles, so it should go rather quickly. As far as lane closures this week, as has been the case for quite some time, the Rio crossover is closed at nighttime, so they can move that equipment around and drive those piles and install those piles and auger the holes. So basically, it's restricting the left turn movements there, but the right turn movements from Rio Road onto the 29 northbound and southbound are open. And then we have the triple lane closures northbound and southbound that basically set up that closure of the crossover. Next slide. So over the next 2 weeks, more of the same. The widening areas, storm drain, Fashion Square retaining wall, gas main relocation, which, like I said, will be completed on the 16th. CenturyLink splicing, which will be completed this month. This is the next week's activity, the splicing, driving, and restriking abutment piles. There's a couple piles that need to be driven just a little bit further. So they'll take care of that next week. Installing the tieback piles and the 4-inch fire department connection pipe. Thank you for changing that from the FDC for me, which is basically a dry standpipe fire suppression system for the tunnel, which we coordinated with the fire department in installing and putting in the contract for installation. Slide. Lane closures for next week.
Did we ever go through the explanation of high back piles? I think we do that? Okay, all right.
So I think Pete asked how you were going to be able to drive the tieback before we started digging
Oh,
out.
that's right, that's right.
Lane closures over the next 2 weeks, same thing we just talked about, the triple lane closure northbound, triple lane closure southbound, get everybody down to one lane so you can control them going through the work zone, and the left turn movements restricted at the Rio intersection at nighttime. So this has become very predictable for people who drive through the area at night, which is good news because it's safer for them, it's safer for the people who are working out there at night, and really haven't seen any major issues with it. Other than if we can ask people not to speed, that'd be fantastic, but I guess that's just going to happen anyway. Any questions on Rio? Mark?
Just trying to make sure, is the water main relocation, is that all completed now?
It is.
That is.
It is. Yep. We're very thankful that's done. It took a little longer than we thought, but it's complete and everyone's happy with it. I think we're supposed to get final acceptance from RWSA next week.
Recall those troubling steel plates are gone. Or those particular set of troubling steel plates.
Well, there is still, the ones on the north side are supposed to be paved tonight.
Right, right.
Yeah, where it crosses.
These are on the south side in the turn lanes.
Yes.
So those are going to go away on the north side?
Tonight, yeah. They're supposed to pave those tonight.
Okay.
South side.
South side's already been paved.
Oh.
The crossing on the south is the north crossing scheduled for tonight. Any other questions on Rio? Okay, we'll move on to 29 widening. This week, they're placing fill in the median, so that's kind of been a long-term operation. You've seen a big change in what used to be a really deep or really tall median is now looking pretty flat. They're continuing that work. Drainage structure installations in the median, so they're building up these drainage structures as the fill comes up so we have a place for water to go. We have a lot of utility relocations going on right now up there. Usually if you see something going on the outside shoulder, that's a utility relocation. We have Quest Business, which is actually CenturyLink now, working up there. Dominion Virginia Power is working up there, and FiberLight is working up there. So all three of them doing their relocations. Pavement repair, that's what Philip discussed. I believe that was fixed Tuesday night, if I'm not mistaken. There was a pothole there at Ashford Boulevard that they went out and paved. Significant lane closures this week. Very similar story to what we've had going on out there is single left lane closures. They close the inside lanes to make deliveries where they have the barrier wall. Haven't really seen any issues with that as far as traffic is concerned so far over the several months they've been doing that. Next slide. Over the next 2 weeks, same type of work, placing the fill, temporary drainage structures, the utility relocations, and the temporary signal construction at Ashwood and Hollymead that unfortunately is a little behind schedule. So that will get done this month. Lane closures, next slide please, are the single left lane closures northbound and southbound. Also we'll have the periodic short-term total closures, just like we talked about there at the 29250 project. This is to get the span wire, for the temporary signals across the road. They have to actually get that across the road, pull it up in the air, then they can open it back up to traffic. So, any questions on Route 29 widening? Okay. Brookmar extended work this week. Erosion control repairs. We had a lot of rain, so we got a little bit of housekeeping to do on that. That's occurring this week. Continuing the grading for abutment A on the south side of the river. Continuing the excavation and hauling to the Route 29 widening project. That's actually slowed down a little bit because they've got enough earth to move around out there for a little while. I'm sure that it'll pick back up probably a little bit later in the winter or the spring. Continuing the Phase 3 archaeological recovery. That should be wrapping up. The actual field work should be wrapping up this month, and then they'll go back and do their reports and determine what they found so that they can publish that information in the future. We still got on here the shoulder closure at Berkmar and Hilton Heights. I guess technically it's not really a shoulder closure, but that shoulder, there's not much of a shoulder there. There's curb, but for when they do have things come in and out, they'll close that shoulder. So we left it on there for the next few weeks. Next 2 weeks, same thing. Continuing excavation and hauling to 29 Widening periodically, and continuing the Phase 3 archaeological recovery with periodic shoulder closures at Berkmar and Hilton Heights. We do anticipate that over the next 2 to 3 weeks, they will be moving the crane from Rio, once they finish up all those abutment piles, over to Berkmar so that they can start driving those piles late January, early February timeframe. So that's kind of something that's coming up in the near future. Any questions on Berkmar? Okay, so signal updates. We've talked about this for a little while now. This is the improvements to adjacent signals, not necessarily around the Rio or the 29 Widening projects, but things that will help us this coming summer when we have that Rio crossover closed. So it's really looking bigger picture, what improvements do we need to make to the area, to the signals in the area to help us with maintenance of traffic next summer. Yesterday we had a meeting with Northwest Regional Operations. They developed lists of recommendations of improvements, and I met with them, and we came up with an appropriate list of improvements, which generally revolve around the installation of high-speed communications, some cameras, some traffic signal controller upgrades that will allow the Traffic Operations Center to change signal timings from their office, which they can do in a matter of minutes instead of deploying technicians, which would take a matter of days. This is the efficiency process that a lot of you went to the Traffic Operations Center and saw how they operate. This will extend that capability outside of the 29 corridor, generally along the hydraulic Rio loop. We do anticipate that people will use that to kind of bypass the construction area.
Dave, now that you've got this list, could we see that at the next meeting, what the list is, and maybe just a brief discussion or a brief statement of what the outcome of that project?
We can have a little table of each one of the projects.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And what improvements we're making. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so now that we met this week to figure out what the projects are, they're starting on design and improvements. Probably already today they started that. So they're sitting down with their internal design team and bringing in the contractor that's going to do all this work under our on-call contract. And it's the same people that installed the adapted Phase 1 infrastructure. So, any questions on that?
Is this the one that's late, or is this separate from the one?
No, this is separate. What was shown as late was the two temporary signals at Ashwood and Hollymead. So we've got existing signals there now. They're in conflict with the work that's coming up, so we're going to have span wire signals. The timing, the phasing won't change. It's just the actual span wire instead of the pole and mast on. Okay, Hillsdale Extended. Work that occurred this week and is kind of an ongoing process here is the city followed up with Albemarle County on the MOU, which is Memorandum of Understanding or Agreement, for the stormwater management basin. If you recall, there's a stormwater management basin that's located in the county. It's a city project. There's some coordination that has to go on between the two organizations. That's getting close to completion. There's been a little bit of back and forth with that language. Also, the VDOT and the city have been working together this week to discuss a resolution to parcel 25, which is Whole Foods on the southern end of the project limits, and how to handle a temporary construction easement that may be required for some work on that property. Plan revisions were submitted for the right-of-way offer packages to be completed. This is a critical item because VDOT's assisting the city with acquiring the right-of-way, similar to what we did when we acquired some Phase 1 right-of-way for the design-build projects, and we kind of rushed this along, and we got a team of people from our right-of-way division working on this, and And that's a critical item to get any plan changes in so we can actually go out and start making offers. And believe, Hal, correct me if I'm wrong, are they making any offers this week, or is that?
One was ready to go yesterday. They may wait until that first of next week to have a batch to go out, but they're getting ready, yes.
So we have some that are ready. You know, we generally try to do these in groups. So by early next week, we'll be sending out offers to property owners. Also, a demolition plan for Seminole Square is underway. Many of you have seen the plans. We have a roadway going through a building that requires a demolition plan. There's a whole lot of components to that, HVAC, electrical, plumbing. All that needs to be worked out, and the city's consultant is currently working on that, and it will be submitted by next week. The city also provided comments on the USPS easement agreement.
Post office.
I'm sorry, thank you. We checked on that Monday, correct?
That's right.
Afternoon.
The post office says that they should have documents back to us today, or tomorrow, so by the end of this week.
They have a whole team of attorneys that's looking at this, so it takes a while, but we are on schedule for that. And then also the last item, the city is obtaining approvals for sole source or proprietary items. This is a standard procedure. It's a federally funded project, so if there are items that are identified that can only be gotten from one source, where they're proprietary in nature, then we need to identify those and present those to the Federal Highway Administration for approval for inclusion in the contract. So that's ongoing now as well.
Dave, what kind of things would those be in that type of project? Just as an example.
Certain light poles that may be specified to match another project or something like that.
Something that was already to tie in.
Yeah, generally it's like your hardware, your aesthetic items, light poles, signs, things like that.
Just curious.
Yeah. I think that wraps up that discussion.
Yeah, back up to Hillsdale just a minute. Maybe Hal, this is really for you. We've talked about that MOU for a while. Do we have a target date for getting some ink on the line there to get that signed?
Part of that is with the ongoing revisions for the 90% drawings
Okay.
to reflect some of the items that the county wanted to see. So it's,
Okay. Is there anything unusual with that MOU, or?
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
they just wanted to see some additional details that are being developed now. With
Okay.
the 90%.
And our target date for the 90% plans is,
The end of this month,
Yeah.
January 28th.
so they're working out plan details with the MOU.
Gotcha.
Okay. Any other questions on this, Kristen?
Again, sorry, being new, I just have
That's quite
a
all
lot
right.
more questions than normal. But on the demolition of the Seminole Square building,
Yes.
I don't know, I know in the city, often like fire department rescue folks kind of come in and use that as a training opportunity when something like that is going on. Is that something that's been?
I don't think that's been discussed at all, to be there when the demolition is being
Yeah,
done.
or as that process happens. I don't know if that's something that would interest them or not, but it's an opportunity.
That's a very interesting idea. I know that we would welcome them being present.
Yeah.
We'll,
It's not my
Is that something we can, Al?
I can check. I know
Yeah.
that the property owner's been engaged with some of these discussions. This may be a situation where more of a surgical demolition is needed rather than a standalone structure. So, but it may not hurt to ask.
Yeah, well, and
Never hurts to ask.
just so everybody knows, there's a Seminole Square. It's the building that's perpendicular to 29. I can't think any businesses are. There's a shoe store.
So on the north end, there's a boutique
Super
there.
Shoes.
Super Shoes. It's a very long building, and the roadway actually will pass through not quite the middle of the building, but you'll be left with portions of the building on either side. So instead of just being a demolition plan for demolishing an entire building, it's how do we demolish this logically so that the two halves that are left are still viable structurally and with regard to utilities as well. This is a challenge. Good. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Oh, Dave, I do have one more question for you. I thought about this as you were talking about kind of lessons learned. How do you feel about your construction inspection crew, quality control, quality assurance coming out of 2015 going into 2016?
I feel great about our team. What we call it, our team is called the IAIB. It's Independent Assessment, Independent Verification. And on design build, that's how it's set up. We have 3 levels of quality control. We have quality control, quality assurance, and then IAIB. So we're the last level of quality management. Our team is functioning fantastically. I couldn't ask for a better staff to help out with this project. Quality control, I think, has been doing a great job. Lane Corman, their folks, we've got some very skilled folks in the field every night. They're doing their job well. The reports are good. Quality assurance, we've made some progress. I think we're getting to where we need to be. But from a quality management perspective overall, I don't have any concerns on the design build. Similarly, we've had some staff turnover on the 29250 project, but overall, I think they've got a good hold on quality management there as well.
Well, thank you. I asked for 2 reasons, quite honestly. First of all, because it's very important, and I'm personally interested in knowing that you feel good about that. The second reason for asking that is there was some concern when we started back a year and a half ago that, gee, we're going to leave out certain steps here. We're hurrying up and leaving things out, and that's not the case at all. I mean, the quality management program, the quality control program, the quality assurance program, the inspection program that's in place is the same that would be in place for any project. We just didn't waste any time making decisions and getting to the point we are. So, you guys have gotten familiar with Dave and his team that's co-located with the Lane Corman team, but behind them is a large team of folks making sure that inspections are done, that quality of materials, quality of concrete, quality of pavement is what it needs to be, and that quality assurance piece are the folks that are making sure the quality control people and all the inspectors are doing their job. And it's a lot of very important documentation. So at the end of a project, you know that, what was the design build project, 140 million, 60 million, I don't remember, frankly, what it was, Owen. But whatever the value of the design build concrete, that the value is there and placed as it should be at the end. So good.
And each one of those levels of quality management is not just inspection, it's testing as well.
Yeah, right.
Inspection and testing.
Right. Okay. Thank you. These are getting to the 3 items that were sort of left open at the end of our December 3rd meeting. And if you'll recall, at December 3rd, we had that list of round number 35 suggestions, 35 suggestions on pedestrian lighting, landscaping, and hardscaping. The intention is to incorporate all of those recommendations. The Southern Environmental Law Center actually engaged the landscape architect that made quite a few recommendations. We weren't, well, I shouldn't say we weren't able to adopt all of them. We didn't, would be a much truer way to say that, but mostly around the use of actual brick as opposed to stamped brick patterns. One of the issues that we kind of left a little loose at the last meeting was the alignment of the pedestrian lights that would be on the local lanes and the alignment laterally across the roadways. And I think we mentioned that there were a few conflicts with some of the utilities. The long and short of it is we're going to make those issues our problem, and we're going to align all the pedestrian lighting laterally across the local lanes. So that is something that's going to be done. There was a meeting on Monday between, and I hope Kenan doesn't mind me using his name there, the architect that did some work for SELC and Lane Corman to just review some details that were primarily focused, and Morgan was at this meeting, around some of the plantings on the deck and the types of planters that would be used. And I guess one thing that maybe we didn't emphasize enough is there is not going to be an irrigation system out to the bridge deck itself. In other words, there's no way to mechanically bring water out to the bridge deck. And I guess there's some feeling, and Morgan, maybe I ask you to fill in here a little bit, that well, this could present some issues with maintaining the plants, which is the county's responsibility, just in terms of getting water to them. Morgan, did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think the point was made that if these plants aren't maintained and really if they don't get adequate water, they're going to fry. And it's a year into the project, once the developer's obligations to keep those plants alive is done, then everyone's going to be wondering, what in the world are we thinking putting plants out here? Getting water out there, if there can't be irrigation across the bridge, which Philip has been pretty clear there can't be, it's going to require that someone get it out there one way or another.
Your buddy to your right.
A watering truck presents some problems. We were trying to think about where a watering truck would park out there, and that's going to be problematic really any time of day, particularly with returns. So that basically involves somebody either wheeling it out there or carrying it on their back. I think it's one thing when we're talking about the southern side where you've got crosswalks, but it's an additional challenge on the north side for somebody to be carrying a lot of water. To get across to that bridge deck, Kenan was there. Owen, thanks for the meeting. I thought it was very productive. Owen had his landscape guy there. There are certainly things that can be done to reduce the amount of maintenance that's required in terms of plant choice. I think this was reflected in Kenan's recommendation.
Yes.
We also got into things like the depth of the planters. The deeper they are, the more soil they hold. The longer you can go between waterings or rain. But I think everybody there just re-emphasized how important it is that maintenance and in particular water be a part of any plan if this is going to look the way people that we're all hoping it will.
Is there a fire hydrant there?
Hydrant?
There's a fire hydrant there. It's on the other side of
Yeah.
the 29 lane sewers. One on the east end, one on the west, I believe.
Mark, do you have any thoughts?
Leave enough opening so you can get a truck out there on it. Can bring my taco stand up.
I'm sure we'll have one.
I think it can be done. It's going to require some maintenance. It can't.
Yeah,
be,
right. Absolutely. I think we can continue to investigate. I guess we have a little time to continue to investigate this issue. Do we, Owen? I mean, as far as
nothing, the planters have not been ordered yet or anything. I don't know what a deadline is on that, but it's obviously not integral to getting the bridge built.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't want it to go too long, but I think we would have some additional time to explore the maintenance requirements, the type of plantings. The only other option, an option if there's not plantings, is to designate a space available for some public art, but somebody else is going to have to pick up that ball as far as commissioning art and placing it. I think if that were an option, we would want VDOT to say, well, this is where it can be, and here are some general parameters that would have to be met.
I think there's been such a strong interest in green.
Yeah,
green
there has
space
been.
out there that
There has been.
it'd be very hard at this point to give up.
Well, then let's continue to flesh that out a little bit with and I think you all did talk about some specific types of planters. Yeah.
And something a little deeper than Kenan had originally left. We talked about the landscaping and the plant materials. I think we have found our producer can make a little bit deeper bowl, so the round bowls Kenan suggested maybe getting them about 24 inches deep instead of 18, so they can hold more soil and collect a little more water and that kind of thing. So we have found they can make just about what we need there.
Well, maybe what we need to turn our attention to is the maintenance issue. Talk a little bit more with the county and stay on track for the plantings as we plan.
County will need to find your strongest and quickest man or woman to
We're going to contract it, I mean,
Quickest.
for sure. We don't have people to do it.
Right.
But I really think the answer is to make sure we can get a truck, even a pickup truck, out there in the area where the planters are, outside of the traffic lane,
Maybe in the middle of the night.
so that they can do it.
Okay, yes.
In the effort to save as much time as possible, we have on the north side, which is the problematic side, I think we might have enough room to get something on the south side. But on the north side, we have 5 round planters around the perimeter of the cemetery. And these were put on the plans. That idea came from this panel as a way to discourage pedestrians from trying to use the north side as a crosswalk when it's not actually a crosswalk. If we were to remove the center planter from that, so we would have 2 on each side, that might be enough room to pull a pickup truck out of the travel lane onto the sidewalk area. Something to
Let's take a look. Let's take a look at some options and think a little bit more about the maintenance. Then that side will look a little different than the other side.
There's no chance to get a spigot out there?
It's not going to run any water out to the bridge deck. The answer would be no, there's not any chance.
I think there's, that seems like the easiest way to do it. But
We would, even if we thought that was a great idea, we would run into some trouble with some other folks who are writing checks if we put the water out on the deck. So let us take a look at it. We want green, we want the plantings. We don't want them to be there for one season and then dry up and die. And let's stay focused on that. And I think at that meeting there was also some additional discussion about the coloring of the stamped brick patterns and.
Right, this is what I referred to
Yeah.
at the beginning of the meeting. I might bring up later. And I may need your help with this, but we were talking about the coloring of the stamped brick, I'm actually talking about the retaining walls now. Maybe
Okay, the retaining walls, all right.
And a lot of people were complimenting, all 4 of us in the meeting were saying that the walls on the now complete John Moore Parkway interchange look good. They've got apparently 2 tones of color in there. There's sort of a lighter tone and then a brown tone.
Yeah.
I think Owen had mentioned that what's planned for Rio, as well as the other projects as part of the 29 improvements. So I remember you saying they were all going to be consistent. It's just to have one color. I think the feeling there was that the 2 colors really helps make it look more real. When it's one color, it just looks.
Is that what we talked about on the phone show?
And the Best
That's
Buy
what we-
one has the same stuff.
Right.
The idea being if we could get that 2-tone, I may be using the wrong terminology, but it includes the brown color as well, it'll look a lot more real, a lot better. Owen, am I mangling any of the summary of that issue?
No, that was Kenan's opinion, I felt. And the explanation there was, I think the color on this corridor is supposed to more represent the color on the bridges that are up on the John Warner Parkway, and not necessarily the McIntyre Interchange Bridge, which is a different color than, and those walls are a different color than all the ones further north on the JWW.
What's the method for, because that's a stain. That's a stain on the retaining walls?
Yes.
So it would be 2 different applications of 2 different colors?
Dave Coggan knows better than I do how they apply that. There's several different ways, but.
Dave and I are losers when it comes to colors.
That's true.
We're both,
You've seen it built.
challenged.
Yeah, it is generally hand applied stain. And I know
Okay.
that we have the sample wall there at our office. This has not yet been stained. Actually, that came up this
Right.
morning, I think, about needing to get around to that. But as far as multiple colors, the challenge that we ran into on John Warner Parkway, there was not a color specified. In looking back at the contract, it said matching a wall that was reconstructed. I believe it may have been the reconstruction of the wall there at the McIntyre interchange. That wall, the color of those, so it's hard to replicate that.
Well, we would know what colors were applied to the John Warner Parkway, though, wouldn't we? Or somebody would.
Somebody may, yeah, the contractors that.
I don't know that one. I know the interchange was a browner color to more
Yeah.
represent that historic wall that's right adjacent to the property there at the interchange. So we tried to sort of blend it in with that. The John Warner Parkway was already being built, and that's more of a granite color, or a gray, a pure gray than the sandier, browner color.
But apparently it's two colors, is that what?
Two tones, that's where I get a little
We'll,
nice. But the point being that the retaining walls
Gotcha.
that interchange themselves have an additional element of looking authentic because of that stain of color, or that stain of color in addition to the.
okay.
It gives it an illusion of depth too, like it's different thicknesses, even though it's really not.
Okay, let's,
Recalling back now, the Meadow Creek Parkway Bridge, what it specified is generally matching the color of the cobble in Meadow Creek, which is very unspecified.
well,
Is that okay?
but if somebody put something on the wall at John Warner Parkway, it came out of a can somewhere, and it's got a label on it. So we just need to figure that, let's figure that out. There's somebody built it, I don't remember who the contractor was.
We know the contractor, we can reach out to them to see if they have those colors.
Maybe it was accidental. We'll find it, we'll run that, we'll chase that down a little bit more.
One last issue.
Okay.
This one should be pretty quick. That's great news about the pedestrian lighting being aligned. This came up at our meeting also, and you had asked for some information on it at some point, just the hue, and we talked about it at one of the meetings.
Yes.
Kenan, I think, had sent some recommendations there, but basically recommending kind of a warmer hue
Yes.
for those local lights than you would typically get for the highway.
Right. Right, yeah, I mean, we passed that along. I mean, I think that's the intensity of the light on the local lanes, the pedestrian lighting, will be other than what's used to light the through lanes. Yes.
Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you for facilitating all
Well,
that,
thanks
too.
for setting up the meeting, and thanks again for the, you look like you're about to say something.
No,
No, okay.
you're quite welcome.
What we talked about, we talked about that yesterday?
Which?
Owen and I talked, the lights.
Yeah.
What they call.
No, you and I didn't.
Well, we probably need to talk about it.
Okay.
It happened really quickly. But, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of issues that play with the lighting and how intense the light is, because in the term warmer, I mean, I'm taking that to mean not as intense. Is that-
I think not as blue, probably.
It's like yellow.
Yeah, I don't think it doesn't apply to the level of illumination.
I think those things are tied together. I mean, we may need to look into it, but what we, I mean, color-wise, I think we're flexible with anything, but the intensity of the light needs to be such because the spacing of the light is dictated by the intensity, and we don't want to decrease the intensity and have light poles every 15 or 20 feet.
No,
Or
no.
dark spots between.
Or dark
Right,
spots.
Yeah,
right.
totally get that.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that with the conversation.
Yeah, Phil, we can bring you up to speed on that, and we can discuss it.
All right. But we're not talking about lighting the pedestrian lighting the same as lighting the roadway.
No.
Okay.
You can get a suntan while you walk down the street.
A twofer.
Or something.
Okay, yeah, definitely, we'll check. Thank you. Okay, The Route 29 widening pedestrian refuge area and the buffer between the northbound lane and the shared use path. The original plan, Kristen, just very quickly, was for sidewalks on both sides of Route 29 widening, and this panel said, why don't we give up a sidewalk for a shared use path on one side, which is what's going to be on the north side, on the
Northbound.
east side, east of the northbound lane. I did ask the Research Council, these folks here, whose building we're in, to take a look at the state of the practice for pedestrian refuge areas and for landscaping areas between a roadway and a shared use path. I know we're not all in agreement on this, but the results of just that literature review would indicate that the design of that pedestrian refuge area, which is an open space in the median between the northbound and southbound lanes, is within, meets the current state of the practice for that type of facility, the number of lanes, and the design speed. The pedestrian crossing will be timed such that somebody that catches it at the beginning of the cycle should be able to cross from the east side to the west side. But if they don't catch it at the beginning of the cycle or don't walk 3 feet per second, they would hang out in this refuge area where there would be another button to kind of change the cycle to finish their crossing. And there was some discussion about whether or not that refuge area should be protected by fencing or something other than just an open area. The long and short of all that is the plan is to move the design forward as it currently exists with the open area, which is a couple feet wider than VDOT's minimum standard, if I recall correctly.
FHWA's minimum is 60, we have 8.
You have 8. Well, your design sheet spec is 6 as well, and we have 8 feet, and that's going to remain as is. As far as the buffer between the roadway and the shared use path, which we had said nothing was going to be there in terms of landscaping, the state of the practice would say, well, that doesn't necessarily need to be that way. That there are some appropriate plantings that can be in that, we refer to it as clear zone. There are some appropriate plantings that could be there between the roadway and the shared use path that don't create any safety issues for motorists, and whether they do or don't provide any level of protection for a pedestrian may be one thing, but they certainly would add to the aesthetics of that buffered area. And the plan is to add some appropriate landscaping to that buffer zone between the roadway and the shared use path, which would also fall under the county's maintenance agreement, but that's where we are right now.
So that means bushes instead of trees?
Something lower level and not as intense as a
Would
tree.
it help
Yes.
to buffer the sound as well if it was kind of shrubbery or not? It would be low.
Be low. It won't. It wouldn't either in terms of buffering line of sight or in terms of density. But it will be something other than nothing.
I would like to say I think that's great. I mean, even though it's not going to keep a car, I think if you're there with a family on a small bicycle, a shrubbery will stop a small kid.
Yeah.
They could shoot all that. I think it's a great.
That buffer zone was 8 feet, is that from the edge of pavement to the edge of pavement to the edge of the shared use path? The shared use path is 10 feet?
Yeah.
10 feet.
It's 80 feet is from the back of the curb.
The back of the curb, I know.
An additional truck.
I know that's our lingo. For them, we'll just say the roadway. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a height concern as well as a density concern?
I don't know if there was a height concern, I don't recall, more so than just the density of the material.
It did speak of a 2-foot height.
Yeah, it did speak of a 2-foot height, you're right.
Yeah, at intersections or site distance.
Yes. Yes.
It would be great. I mean, again, I'm with Chip. This is a great step in the right direction, I think. But it would be great if we could get some smaller caliper trees, intermixed. I mean, not at the intersections and that sort of thing. But again, it would provide the pedestrian or the biker just that sense of separation. Again, it's not going to be, it's not going to stop a tractor trailer, but I think
Well, we'll need to come up with a mini design for this, right?
And it doesn't have to be littered with.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Something to break it up.
But Mark, I mean, I know there's difference of opinion on the median refuge area, and I don't know what more to do.
All I can say is I've learned that a pedestrian is frangible, not rigid.
But I'll let Jose Gomez and the researcher Peter Holmes really jumped on it and did a good job of taking a look.
But I do want to extend my thanks. You guys responded very quickly and tried to do a good job in researching. I don't agree with the results, but it's a consensus building exercise.
Some would say it hasn't been consensus building. Okay. The last thing was, I already forgot. Oh, yes, yeah. And Henry's not here. But there was some concern about the galvanized guardrail down at the 250-29 project that went in the area outside of the sidewalk on Route 29 there at the interchange itself. And I think we had a couple of meetings ago on the same day that the bright, shiny, galvanized guardrail showed up. And they're really in the contract, which is what the contract called for, and there was no landscaping of that area in the current contract. Isn't that right, John? Yeah. So actually, John Lynch had some folks talk with the city staff and said, look, there are some options here if the city would want to consider them, because the city maintains this area. And that was that we could leave the galvanized guardrail in place and add an enhanced landscaping plan that would be installed with another contract. Not going to put anything else into this current contract, because we want those folks focused on finishing. And these are just round number estimates, and that would be about a $50,000 worth of enhanced landscaping in that median area and around some of the stormwater management area. We could replace the galvanized guardrail and the post with the powder-coated guardrail, that more darker-looking guardrail, and not do the enhanced landscaping, and that's more expensive, about $170,000. Or we could do both, replace the guardrail, replace the post, do landscaping. It's about $220,000. Now we're getting to the point of maybe not being able to fit this amount into current program budget. But the long and short of it was that the city responded, let's go with option one. We'd like to leave the galvanized guardrail, and I believe, I don't want to misspeak, I think partly because of the maintenance issue. It's cheaper to maintain if something happens to that guardrail, as does from time to time. And let's but a lot of interest in the enhanced landscape. So the plan, where we are now, and would suggest to you, is that we leave the guardrail in place, but get ready for a contract to add the enhanced landscaping. And the city had some pretty specific thoughts. They had a landscape plan. Add that landscaping plan sometime in the fall, in late 2016, when Rio's back open, or the first quarter of 2017. And John, again, I don't want to misspeak, but we could handle that within the contingencies that we have for the current project budget. So it's not taking money from somewhere else.
In that spot, the guardrail is already in, but is there any other part of that project where the guardrail is not yet in place?
Not that I know. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that's it. And the sidewalk is in between the guardrail.
Yes.
So, again, it was good that the discussion came up. We did go back to the city and will move forward. John, would that be a contract you would have to let, or?
We're looking at that now. We
Okay.
do have on-call landscaping contracts
Okay.
that would be easy, that we could utilize, and if that's
Okay.
not possible, we'll advertise for that.
So, I mean, the long and short of it is shortly after Rio is back open, we can get either through an on-call or a contract on the street to come back and do that landscaping in that area where the sidewalk is.
So the city's responsible for maintaining that guardrail? Is that what I understood? Okay.
So thanks to Ken Connors I know he coordinated that with Tony Edwards, I believe. Appreciate those guys turning that around quickly.
Before we leave these last three items, something Mark said I've been ruminating on over here, the idea of the bridge deck, being able to get a pickup truck out there with water.
Mm-hmm.
That made me a little uneasy because really part of our goal has been to try to fill those things up with plants or something else so that they look good. They don't look like a concrete highway facility. I'm just thinking, we've got the crosswalk area out there. If there's sort of like a golf cart type vehicle which can fit a pretty big water tank on it, and we could design around that as opposed to trying to have enough room where we could actually pull a pickup truck on there, because I think that really would undercut what we're trying to accomplish. So maybe just another approach.
To be honest, I don't think we're going to I think we're going to get to a pretty good answer on maintaining those plants. This isn't a one-off in the world of landscaping on bridge decks, and somebody has figured this out without running irrigation necessarily to a bridge deck. If we were in Arizona, running irrigation to a bridge deck is maybe not. Of course, they have different kind of plants, so you don't need it so much. But with the freezing and thawing here and the weather conditions, having anything go bad on a bridge deck with water is just not something we want to do. But that's a good point. We'll keep that in the mix as we just work through this. If not by the next meeting, certainly by the first one in February, and get that figured out. But we'll definitely stick with the idea of planning those areas. And I think we talked about this a good while, that the reason, as Dave said, for the additional planters on the north side is we took out that crosswalk, and we don't, for a good reason, and we, to the extent that we can, want to discourage people from scooting across on the north end. The stamped brick patterns, just not to leave that out of the mix, if you recall, the stamped brick patterns won't just be at the crosswalks at Rio. It'll be also stamped brick patterns, the asphalt between the driveway entrances on the local lanes. So that'll be carried down on the local lanes as well. And if everybody will remember our choice of name, Rio, will be on the end of the bridge deck on the northbound and southbound through lanes, just right of, since that's our tag.
So just one clarification on the entrances.
Mhm.
I think it's just colored to delineate the walking area. I don't think it's a standard pattern. I'd have to get back and check. I don't think that was the recommendation.
I think it was.
Okay, I may be wrong. Apologize if I am.
It's my recommendation. We'll go back and check and be sure. But whatever was recommended on the plan sheets that Ken drew up is what we carried forward. Any new business? Chris?
Nope.
Mark?
I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you, because we didn't have a December 17th meeting, but to Philip and VDOT, Jason and Lynn Corman, and everybody for coming out to the toy lift and being part of that. It's been a long time now, so it's like months ago, but
Yeah.
but it was a really nice thing that you all were able to participate and be out there for that and help make it a big success. So thank you.
Well, yeah. Good thing to do.
Well, while we're in the thank yous, having just been named to this panel 3-4 days ago, trying to kind of get caught up before I got here, I was really impressed with the website and how easy it is to navigate and how consistent it is from page to page and how you can find what you're looking for. So
Good,
thank you. That made homework much easier.
Good. Well, thank you very much. Thank Lou, Hatter, and his team really stayed on top of that.
And it was something we requested in that original
Yes.
setting, so I'm
Yeah.
really happy to see
Yeah,
it exist.
a lot of things have carried over, and the panel has continued to make a lot of meaningful recommendations have been incorporated into the plans. Okay, our next meeting is January 21st. So see you in a couple of weeks. Take care. Thank you.
Good holidays. Did you go south? Over there?
I thought it was.
Really?
They didn't want to.